We've all been there. A new app gets rolled out, a new device shows up, and all of a sudden, our team feels divided. Some people are all in, super excited, while others are skeptical, and it can be really tough to find that common ground. So, in this explainer, we're going to map out a path from those tech divides to some real team triumphs. We're going to lay out a clear, research backed plan to not just get through these tensions, but to come out the other side as a stronger, more unified team. This right here, this is the question that's at the heart of everything we're talking about. And what's so important to remember is that this question starts from a place of deep respect. It assumes that every single person on our team is here for the kids, completely passionate about what they do. You see, the disagreements we have about tech, they're not about a lack of commitment. They're about different, deeply held beliefs on what's actually best for students. So our goal here is to honor all of those perspectives and find a way to move forward together. And this is it. This is really the core message of this whole explainer. Before we can ever agree on an app or a website or any device, we have to strengthen our foundation as a professional team. The technology, that's just a tool. Our ability to collaborate, now that's the engine. And it all, absolutely all of it, starts with trust.
Okay, so let's get real about the challenge. We've all felt it, right? That little bit of friction in our planning meetings or noticing the different approaches happening from one classroom to the next. Now, this isn't about pointing fingers at all. It's about being honest and acknowledging that these divisions are real and they do impact our students. This plan is all about tackling that challenge head on with a strategy that validates everyone's experience and gives us a clear path forward.
So where do we even begin? Well, not with the tech. We start with trust. Our very first step is to build what researchers call psychological safety. Now I know, it sounds like a fancy term, but it's really a simple, powerful idea. It's about creating a space where every single one of us feels safe enough to share our honest thoughts, to ask those tough questions, and yeah, even to admit when we're struggling, all without any fear of being judged or shut down. So how do we actually do that? Well, we use a clear, structured process. First, we'll start by agreeing on some shared norms for how we're going to talk to each other. Then we'll use something called reflective listening rounds, where each person gets uninterrupted time to speak. And this part is crucial. We'll document everything on a shared chart so every single concern is seen and validated. And here's why this structured approach is so incredibly powerful. It's not just about being polite. It's about intentionally building what's known as relational trust. When we actually take the time to formally acknowledge every single perspective in the room, we send a really clear message. Your voice matters here. And that right there is the bedrock of a strong collaborative culture. This quote from Bloom just nails it. It perfectly captures the shift that happens when we build that trust. Instead of digging our heels in, just defending our own positions, we start to see ourselves as a single team of problem solvers. We move from debating to creating, from my way versus your way to our way. This approach also lines up perfectly with what we know about adult learning theory. Think about it. As professionals, we're most motivated when our own expertise and experiences are valued, right? This process isn't some top-down mandate. It actually positions every teacher as a critical contributor to finding the right solution for our students. It builds ownership. All right, so now that we've laid that foundation of trust, we are ready for the next big shift. And this is where we move away from talking about our personal preferences and start talking about what truly matters, the impact on our students. We're going to shift the whole conversation from what I like to what the evidence shows us. Come on, we've all heard this, and if we're being honest, we've all probably said it. I just don't like using this app. I prefer the old way of doing things. And let's be super clear, those feelings are totally valid. But when our conversations get stuck on personal preference, we just hit a wall. It becomes a battle of wills, and our students end up getting caught right in the middle. So, here it is. This is the pivot. We change the question. Instead of talking about what we prefer, we start talking about evidence. This one question, what does the student work show us? It unites us around a shared goal and a shared reality, the actual work our students are producing. So how do we make this pivot happen in a structured way? Well, we use a tool called a strengths-based inquiry cycle. It's a really simple but powerful process. We start by looking at student work together, not to find what's wrong, but to identify what's working, to see the strengths. Then, based on what we see, we set a shared goal. And only then do we start exploring different strategies, tech and non-tech, to help our students hit that goal. It's a cycle of continuous improvement, and it's all driven by evidence. The impact of this shift is huge. When we ground our conversations in shared goals and actual student work, it just takes the personal out of it. It's no longer my opinion versus your opinion. It's about our shared commitment to our students.
And this builds something incredibly important, something called collective efficacy. That's just the shared, unshakable belief that we, as a team, truly have the power to make a real difference for our kids.
Okay, we've built trust, we're focusing on evidence. So, how do we keep this amazing momentum going? Well, it all comes down to the way we talk to each other. In this final section, we're going to dive into the art of giving and receiving feedback in a way that actually fuels growth instead of creating resistance. Let's just look at a quick comparison here. Over on the left, we have directive feedback. That's the "you should do this" approach. It can feel like a judgment, right? And it immediately puts people on the defensive. But on the right, we have reflective questioning. This is what guides our colleagues to find their own solutions and promotes that real sense of professional agency. So, what does this actually look like in practice? Well, instead of saying, "you should try this," we might ask, "what are you noticing about your students' needs right now?" Or, if a colleague is kind of on the fence about a new strategy, we could ask, "what would you need to see in your students' work to feel confident giving this a try?" You see the difference? These kinds of questions empower our colleagues, and they open up a real dialogue instead of just shutting it down. And here's the second key to really effective feedback, and it's a big one. We have to remove judgment entirely. We need to ground everything we say in specific, objective observation. It's not about what we think happened, it's about what we actually saw happen. Let's look at some real examples here. Saying the lesson was chaotic, that's a judgment, and it's probably going to make someone feel defensive. But what if we said, "I noticed that 5 students were off task during the app activity"? That's an observation, and it opens the door to a productive conversation. On the flip side, "good job with engagement" is nice, but it's not very helpful. But saying 90% of students submitted work that met the learning target, now that is powerful, specific feedback that tells us exactly what's working. The bottom line is this: evidence-based feedback keeps the focus exactly where it belongs, on the work and on our students. It takes that emotional charge out of the conversation and lets us have focused, collaborative talks about what's best for kids. So let's put it all together. By rebuilding that trust, by focusing on evidence, and by really refining how we give feedback, where do we end up? Well, we end up with a much stronger team and a healthier professional culture for every single one of us. This is the goal. This is what we're working toward. A supportive environment where everyone feels respected and truly heard. A place that empowers real professional growth, creating a team of reflective practitioners who own their own development. And ultimately, a shared, student-centered approach to every single decision we make. So look, if you remember one thing from all of this, let it be this. By building our work on these 3 pillars, collaboration, reflection, and evidence, we are doing so much more than just solving a tech problem. We're building the kind of professional culture where every one of us can thrive and where every single one of our students can succeed. So, I'm going to leave you with a challenge. This isn't just something to think about, it's something to do. What is the one reflective, open-ended question you can ask a colleague this week? What's one small step you can take to start building that trust and shifting the conversation? Let's start this journey, not next month, not next week, but right now.